are appointed by CAMS or Motorsport Australia. So,
Yeah.
And the broad outline is that they're there to ensure that the event is conducted in accordance with the highest standards of safety, fairness and social responsibility. And that covers all stakeholders, competitors, crew, promoters, spectators, everybody. That's the overriding thing. And they're not there really to wield sticks. For instance, this is my role has only ever been circuit racing and speed events. And I'll just read you my list. Prior to the event, we check supplementary regs, further regs, sporting regs for each of the categories. We may approve any changes that are needed or may be consulted for that. At the event, we view permits, track licence, event paperwork, risk assessment. This was a big thing when I was learning to be a steward. I sort of thought, well, you know, risk assessment, pick your feet up and use common sense. But the whole point with risk assessment is to look at the place and think, well, what could possibly go wrong, you know, the various levels of what can or can't go wrong, and to try and avoid it, so that to avoid it rather than have to deal with it later on. Critical incidents procedure, that's a big thing. If there is a critical incident, the clerk of course will generally run it, not always, but generally, and everybody needs to know what they're doing so that evidence is gathered and not destroyed. People are interviewed so that it runs smoothly and as quickly as possible. Police generally take over and that sort of stuff. A steward will do a track inspection, usually with the clerk of course, attend a driver's briefing, although these days it's all read and understand the briefing and sign off on it, which I think is actually a good thing, because it comes back to the competitor needs to be responsible for, they've read the regs, they know what's happening. Like for instance at Eastern Creek, one of the things is to exit at gate 4 rather than come back through pit lane. If they don't read that stuff or understand it, well, you know, that can be a bit embarrassing for them. It's also, everybody's covered by CAMS or Motorsport Australia insurance. So the stewards, you know, that's part of their brief. We approve an event start, we approve any bulletins, we approve change of drivers. I mean, these are all sort of mundane things, but that's what falls back on the steward. The stewards will monitor the event schedule, the safety equipment and services, medical services, scrutineering, and then of course coming down to imposing penalties, fines for breach of regulations, for instance, pit lane speeding or disobeying a direction from an official. And we'll also exclude from an event an ineligible or an unsafe vehicle or an unfit competitor. And then, of course, the judicial part, convene and conduct hearings. And at the end of it, keep a record of the entire event and send it off to Motorsport Australia, plus the promoters, and keep a copy ourselves. At the end of the day, we usually stay on for at least an hour. If there's any protests, we listen to that. But, you know, I know a lot of stewards over the years, and they're all very fair people, and they're there for the competitors and for everybody. They're not there to wield a big stick. Or I mean, my very first event, I was called in by the clerk of course and the stewards, because Peter and I, he was teaching me how to do a burnout of the hill climb, and we thought we were way away from the event, but of course the plumes of smoke that was coming up through the forest was, it was just a horrendous thing. I thought, what the hell? I had to beg that I was allowed to compete. So that was my first introduction to a clerk of course and a steward, which was just hilarious later on.
Too funny. So do you find, is the role of a steward pretty much the same from, say, club level to state, national and up?
It's all the same procedure. Yes, definitely. Supercars, rules for supercars are a tad different to super sprints and state levels, but it's all the same procedural stuff. Yep. I mean, for instance, supercars, I don't know if they still do it, but if they overtake under a yellow, they redress, and that's all good. But there was talk that they were going to stop that, because at state levels you have people coming in and saying, "Oh no, that I redressed that overtaking after a yellow." Well, no, well you can't. There's no redress in other than supercars.
Okay, has anyone got some questions for Karin?
Oh, that doggy does.
No? Okay.
Oh, I have one.
Yeah.
Just, Karin, what's the pathway to becoming a steward? Because I think it is a bit different. Like it's like a clerk and stuff, but it is quite different. And you have to do like an online, or you have to do in-depth training, don't you? Isn't there, like, there's practical and there's theory training for stewards? Is that correct?
No. Well, maybe it's changed now. I did my stuff at when was it? Probably 10 or 12 years ago. I broke my car, and I thought I'd done flagging, and I've done grid stuff, and I thought, oh, I'll give stewards a go, because you want to give back. So Dave Ellum at the time, I did a lot of assistant clerk course with him. He was a gold steward, and so I trained with him, and it was all hands-on. I did lots of different events, and I had fabulous experience along the way, and it's all by just doing it and coming across incidents, like for instance the hill climbs at Mount Panorama, which were a national event. It was interesting there because it was absolutely pouring rain, and the clerk came in and said, I'm not declaring it wet, clearly it is, but I'm leaving it to the competitors to make their own decisions. And we thought, whoa, this is going to be a mess, because we'll be picking them all out of the walls. But interestingly, apart from one incident, everybody drove to the conditions and whether they had slicks or not, and there was no dramas with that. But anyway, so I spent a lot of time with him doing risk assessment and checking the regs. He drummed into me to make sure you understand the sporting regs. So whatever event you've got on the day, you have to know all their regs, or try to, and just deal with the people who come in. And most of the people who come in directly to the stewards, I mean, quite often we get stuff from the assistants and then comes to stewards, but people will come in and, they say, oh, I've been pinged a 5-second penalty, and I didn't move at the start. My camera captured all that. Well, firstly, it's a judge of facts. But anyway, we look at the camera, and we, try and humour them. But a camera can't capture whether there's a false start or not, because a false start is also going backwards, which then impedes the person behind you, or may do. So, but a lot of the competitors don't understand that. But look, generally you explain it and they're fine. They just, huff and puff and off they go. Offer them a biscuit and a cup of tea and they're gone. It may be an online course these days, I don't know, but mine was certainly hands-on at events. You start off as a supernumerary, which is number 3 steward. I was number 3 steward at Supercars at Homebush one year. And that was interesting because my job was to go through every bit of footage, and wherever there was any sort of a hiccup, I had to mark that bit, so that if something came of that, be it a refueling thing or a track incident, I had to mark the time, and then if something came of it, number 1 and 2 steward, plus the race director or whoever, the others, would then look at it closely and to make a decision as to, the outcome of that particular whoopsie. Yeah, so that was an interesting role.
And Scott's just said it is a face-to-face stewards course now. So thanks, Scott, for that.
It's a face-to-face.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
All right, fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Karin.